Hello again. In the last years of peace before World War One, people continued to experiment with pagan ideas and images which had persisted from the ancient past. In many ways, this was a continuation of the trends that we have already seen. For example, the romantic literary form of paganism was still there. We might mention here the poet Rupert Brooke and his circle of friends. One of them, Virginia Woolf, actually referred to the group as the neo-pagans, and this term was not unjustified. Brooke and his friends took steps towards building a kind of mystical nature cult, but it seems that they never quite got there. Brooke's well-known poem, The Old Vicarage, Grantchester, is generally remembered for its mawkish final line about honey for tea, but there's more to it than that. It depicts pre-war Cambridge as a landscape inhabited by pagan Greek divinities. Would I were in Grantchester, some, it may be, can get in touch with nature there, or earth, or such. And clever modern men have seen a fawn a-peeping through the green, and felt the classics were not dead, to glimpse a naiad's reedy head, or hear the goatfoot piping low. Other examples of paganism from the same time are not difficult to find. The writer Edward Thomas rated himself as 9/10 pagan. He wanted to see a statue of Demeter in the English countryside, and he regarded reciting passages of Shelley in the forest as a religious experience. The novelist H. Rider Haggard combined Christian and pagan sympathies and wrote, "I have a respect for Thor and Odin, I venerate Isis, and always feel inclined to bow to the moon." The poet Eleanor Fargen published pagan verse in a book entitled Pan Worship. But experiments with paganism in this period were not confined to writers and poets. Paganism began to reach something like a mass audience by another route. What we have here is not a revival of ancient European beliefs and practices, but rather an effort to transplant Native American traditions into Euro-American culture. Whether this should be regarded as an imperialist attempt at cultural appropriation, or an attempt to challenge imperialist assumptions by promoting First Nations traditions, is a matter of debate. What we are dealing with here is the woodcraft movement, the early 20th century movement for the formation of children, particularly boys, through practical experience of outdoor life. Woodcraft was founded in America in 1902 by Ernest Thompson Seton, and it came to Britain in 1907 when Robert Baden-Powell founded the Boy Scouts. The Scouts were broadly Christian, or at least monotheistic, but other woodcraft organisations were more spiritually adventurous. Seton's organisation, the Woodcraft Indians, drew on his ideas about Native American cultures. In Britain, the Order of Woodcraft Chivalry was formed in 1916 by a man by the name of Ernest Westlake, who revered a holy trinity of Pan, Artemis and Dionysus, along with Aphrodite. His successor, Harry Bingham, also had pagan sympathies. His veneration for Dionysus ran so deep that he changed his name to Dion. Woodcraft was not confined to children. At least one group, the Kindred of the Kibbo Kift, admitted members of all ages. This was perhaps the most exotic woodcraft group of all. Its religious side was eclectic, including not only Native American culture, but also ancient Egyptian paganism, Freemasonry, Aleister Crowley, the Golden Dawn, and Congolese religion. In hindsight, the rise of the woodcraft movement looks like a missed opportunity. Here was a chance for pagan ideas and practices to break through to a mass audience. The conservative scouts, who came to dominate the movement, were largely not inclined to go down this path. But could not other woodcraft organisations have done so? Probably not, it has to be said. Their constituency was fundamentally too Christian to allow religiously adventurous ideas to make much headway. And woodcraft religion was arguably characterised not so much by a committed paganism as by a deliberately vague universalism captured by formulations such as the Great Spirit. We now move on to the most famous 20th century pagan of all, Edward Alexander Crowley, better known by his adopted name of Aleister Crowley. Crowley tends to be remembered today as an exceptional figure, an addict of drugs, sex, and devil worship, the wickedest man in the world, as the press dubbed him. But in fact, there was less to Crowley than meets the eye. He was a man of his time, a recognisable product of the cultural currents that we've been looking at in these videos. Crowley's transgressive behaviour was shocking to the mainstream, but it was entirely consistent with the countercultural aspect of the Romantic pagan movement. Crowley liked to play with symbolism from Christianity, but his religious system can reasonably be described as pagan. It drew on ancient pagan traditions, in particular Egyptian religion. Crowley, like woodcraft, represents a kind of road not taken in the pagan revival. Crowley could have served as the founding figure of an Edwardian mass pagan movement, but his personality and reputation didn't equip him to be an effective salesman for his product. The catastrophe of World War I didn't halt the course of the pagan revival. The interwar years saw further efforts at recreating pagan religion. One significant figure in this period was a friend of Crowley's, the psychotherapist Dion Fortune. Fortune was a semi-Christian, semi-pagan mystic, and the author of a series of magically themed books. Consistently with what we've seen of other pagan revivalists, she had a particular interest in the great goddess Isis and the god Pan. She celebrated a rite of Isis, and perhaps a rite of Pan, in a converted church in Belgravia in London. Most importantly, it's in the interwar period that we find the first evidence of people attempting to recreate witchcraft as a revived pagan religion. The midwife of the pagan witch movement was Dr. Margaret Murray. In 1921, Murray published The Witch Cult in Western Europe, a curious book in which she argued that the records of early modern witch trials bore witness to the existence of a living pagan religion which had survived the apparent triumph of Christianity. Charles Leland's Aradia had appeared in the relatively recent past. As we saw in the last video, it made the claim that a pagan witch sect still survived in modern Italy. Murray played a key role in popularising the idea that witches were really pagans. Following the witch cult, she published other books on the same theme, as well as an influential article for the Encyclopaedia Britannica. There is evidence that some groups attempted to recreate the witch cult that they found in Murray's books. In Nazi Germany, Heinrich Himmler took an interest in the same theories. After World War II, Murray's theories would eventually produce the witch religion known as Wicca, but that still lay somewhat in the future. In the 1930s, other attempts to revive paganism were going on. An Australian lawyer called Alexander Rudd Mills attempted to revive the worship of Odin in fascist form. In New York, there were several groups that attempted to recreate Greek paganism. The most successful of these was the Church of Aphrodite. This was established in 1939 by Gleb Botkin, a Russian émigré and former novice monk. In spite of its name, there is room to question how far the Church of Aphrodite was really pagan. The religious system that Botkin produced was explicitly monotheistic. Botkin's organisation would have looked more familiar to a modern Russian Orthodox cleric than to an ancient Greek priest of Aphrodite. Nevertheless, the church may be seen as drawing on the tradition of romantic modern pagan belief in a great goddess. The Church of Aphrodite seems to have attracted dozens, if not hundreds, of adherents. It faded away only after Botkin's death in 1969, by which time the pagan revival had passed into the hands of a new generation of devotees. And on that note, this is where our story ends. After World War II, the first pagan mass movement was born in the shape of Gerald Gardner's Wicca. But that's a story that has already been told many times before. It's time for us to draw to a close. I hope that you found these videos interesting. If so, please feel free to leave feedback. Goodbye, and I hope to see you all again. If you want to learn more about the subject of pagan revivals, you may like to buy this book, which is out in October and currently open for pre-order. Paganism Persisting, from Exeter University Press, which I wrote with the historian Francis Young. It's available from the usual outlets.